Hi friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is HADASSAH TREU. I'm an award-winning Christian author, poet, blogger, motivator and encourager. And I want to talk today about the war, the fight, the battle, the struggle between the flesh and the spirit. We are all caught in this battle, in this constant war daily. And we always have the choice which side to take. Shall we give in to the desires of the flesh, the cravings of the flesh, or shall we walk by the Spirit? This is a very important topic and it's actually part of our daily life. So, since the fall actually we can trace the division between the cravings of the flesh and the longing of the spirit, between the instant gratification and the long-lasting satisfaction, between the children of the promise and the natural children. And this tug of war actually began with Abraham, the father of faith. He had two sons, Isaac, born miraculously in fulfillment of God's promise, and Ishmael, born naturally in the flesh. Apostle Paul likes Ishmael, born by Hagar the slave, and Isaac, born by Sarah, the child of the promise, with the two covenants, the covenants of law and the covenant of grace in Galatians 4:21-31. And the interesting thing is that we can trace this same pattern in the family of Isaac, the firstborn, the child of the promise, and in his two children, the twins, Jacob and Esau. They were fighting even in the womb of Rebekah, their mother. This we read in Genesis 25. And the lives and the destinies of these two brothers and the choices they made through their lives actually point spiritually and prophetically to the war between the flesh and the spirit. And their story is really a warning and a sobering example for us as a New Testament believers. We should be very careful in our choices, in our daily choices, if we walk by the Spirit or if we walk in the flesh, and if we gratify our flesh or we crucify it. So gratify or crucify, or walk by the Spirit, walk in the flesh. This is really the daily choice we have as a New Testament believer. So let's continue to see how the story develops and what is this one choice that Esau made that actually had really long-lasting negative consequences. He made one crucial decision with eternal consequences. This was the decision to sell his birthright. We need to understand that in this culture, the birthright had a very, very important value and role. It meant to take over the family heritage and the authority and the right to be the family leader and to manage all the family possessions. But the thing is that the inheritance was not only material, it was also spiritual. These were all the precious blessings, promises of God to this particular family, to this particular family line, from generation to generation, because God is a generational God. And here we find Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. These are the two sons of Isaac, the son of Abraham. So here we find Esau in a moment of physical weakness, experiencing the pangs of hunger and strong craving for food. he smells exactly then the delicious smell of the meal Jacob is cooking, and he asks his brother if he can have from the meal. But amazingly, Jacob wants to sell him the food, and the price is extremely high. He wants Esau's birthright. And I want to read for you this passage. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Genesis 25:32-34. We see here that Esau, this was not just a moment for weakness and hunger for Esau. No, Esau saw his birthright and his spiritual implications not as something so important. He didn't place so high value on spiritual things because we actually read that he despised his birthright. And what does this mean, to despise something? It means to shrink from something, to detest it, to even hate it, to look down at it, to neglect it, to regard it with contempt. And Esau's decision showed something deeper in his soul. This showed us that he looked down on the spiritual things and thought they were worthless. What mattered to him was the now and here, obviously. So he gave higher preference on the flesh and fleshly things. As a sharp contrast to Esau's behavior stands Jesus' reaction in the desert, if you remember this. When Jesus was tested in the desert after 40 days without food, and this should have been an unimaginable hunger after a 40 days fast. But then the Son of God placed God and the spiritual things higher than any instant gratification outside God's will. This was obvious in his response, which we read in Matthew 4. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So our Lord sets an example for us to set our minds on the Spirit, because this makes all the difference between life and death. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. This is what we read in Romans 8:6. The thing is that when we cherish the things of God more, we cherish and treasure God more, and we place in this way the pursuit and the desire for His presence above anything else. The main question for us is, what does God's presence mean to us? What does God's presence mean to you? Esau's decision to sell his birthright for a meal actually shows his neglect of God's presence. And this explained God's choice to lead the two brothers and to give them two different destinies, although they were twins. And we read this in the verses 12-13 in Romans 11, where we read, the older will serve the younger. And as it is written, Jacob I loved and Esau I hated. So we see what dire consequences this choice of Esau had, because as I said, this was not only choice, but this showed what was in his heart. He neglected God's presence. And the question is, what do we do with God's presence, and what priority, what value has God's presence in our lives? The story actually is a sobering example and a sobering warning to examine our hearts and ask the Lord to increase our spiritual hunger and make us desire and place a higher value on the things of God more than on temporal pleasures and gratification. And we can do this only when we daily choose to walk by the Spirit, following His guidance and living by His power. So when we are actually the most vulnerable to temptations and to giving into the flesh, I've noticed that when we are anxious, exhausted, and in emotional pain, we are most vulnerable, and we often reach out for other things to comfort us and give us a moment of quick relief, of quick pleasure, of quick gratification. This can be food, this can be alcohol, TV watching, shopping, or any other thing. We know this is the wrong choice, which leaves us even emptier and guilty. What can we do instead? We need to let the Lord satisfy our cravings, satisfy our emptiness, our spiritual hunger, filling the voids in our hearts. So it can be our daily prayer to the Lord to increase our thirst and hunger for Him, because only then we can successfully deal with the cravings of the flesh and our fleshly desires. Spending more time with the Lord and focusing on things above helps us to cultivate our spiritual hunger. So what are the things that help you cultivate your spiritual hunger, and how do you deal with your fleshly desires? In which moments are you the most vulnerable to give in to fleshly desires, and what makes you stronger to resist these fleshly desires and temptations? I would be happy if you share in the comments, and if you found this video helpful, please share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also want to remind you about my book. If you haven't checked it out, please take a look and check it out. My book, Draw Near: How Painful Experiences Become the Birthplace of Blessings. It is a wonderful book that can help you draw near to God in painful moments, in moments of suffering, and use them as catalysts for growth. Check it out if you haven't. So thanks a lot for watching, friends, and I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time.